Dive into the dynamic world of entrepreneurship, innovation, and business with CapLander, hosted by Jody and Morgan of J. Consulting. Whether you're invested in the private capital markets, building your own venture, or curious about the entrepreneurial spirit, this podcast unpacks the latest trends, insights, and opportunities shaping today's market and the people driving what's next. CapLander connects the dots between personal and professional life because how you do anything is how you do everything. Featuring expert guests, deep discussions, and a dynamic mother-daughter duo, CapLander is your go-to resource for staying informed and inspired. Hi, Jody.
I'm Morgan. I have a funny story about today. I went to the Go Greek yogurt place, which I love here. It's crazy expensive. And the thing of it is, it's dangerous because you get your own, it doesn't like they don't give you
You
a
pick your
smaller,
own, like you pull the
you put
lever
the
and get
lever
your
down.
own.
Which in
Right.
one hand is great, but then the other hand, you know by how much it costs, like what a pig you are. So I'm like gonna have to go into the witness protection program because I go here when I'm in town like 5 times a week. And as a result of that, they had a locals discount, which they first used when they opened up, it was 15% off.
Right.
So of course that made it better. And I had a number, like I wanted to stay under $12 or $13.
Well, you
So
also don't ever pay full price for anything. Like you are a coupon person. Like it does
I
make
like,
you feel
yeah,
better.
that's the
Yeah.
buffalo in me. I feel like certain things you have to pay full price for, but otherwise there's always a way. So there really is no other way today because I went in and I got my whatever, and there's no more discount of 15%. So my little strategy is to sort of pretend like I have to go get a napkin and put a little more on top, because then I feel like I have leveled the playing field. So apparently they've seen me do this now, not once, but today was the twice. And she said to me, "That's not okay." Like
No.
basically, I see you.
Yeah. They do see you.
Then
You
I
you
realized,
can't
I
do
says,
that.
"Oh, no problem." And then when I came home, I realized that the jacket that I'm wearing still had the tag on it from Free People. So she probably thought that I
And you
tried to
stole it.
steal that too.
Right. Oh my God.
And then I see you.
You know what
I'm
they
like,
say?
"That's it. Let's
We're all going to
go."
hell. That's it.
We're all
We're
going
all
to
going to
hell, and you're
hell.
coming with me.
No. Oh my God.
Anyways,
That's pretty funny. I used to work at a frozen yogurt shop when I was in high school, and I have never weighed more than when I worked at that job
oh,
because
that's right.
they didn't want us to use the sample cups to have things, like, they wanted to reserve those as much as possible, but they would take the waffle cone leftovers and put them into, like, little, like, bins
Dangerous.
basically where people could taste them. So we use them like tortilla chips. We're like, "Well, we won't use the cups, but you would take the waffle cone cracker, you put underneath the
Love
flavor
it.
you'd wanna try, you pull the lever, and then you pop it in your mouth like a chip with salsa, except it was froyo."
Yep. See, I would be dangerous. All right, let's do a little recap. We were just in New York, and we got into the Monkey Bar, which was so fun, on the week of where it was Met Monday.
Right, so we went to Monkey Bar on Tuesday. The whole thing was such a hoot. I mean, we flew in, we met at the airport, which we typically do. We went in for in-person meetings on Wednesday, and then we went down to Grand Central Station. This is in the afternoon because Swatch has this collab going on with Omega watches where it's all mission to Mars, and there's all these different watches based on planets. So there's the sun, there's Pluto, which I
Mine's
think
fun. That's what I got. So fun.
right.
Love.
Right. And then there's the Earth one, there's the moon, there's like 1965, there's all these different watches, and that you can only get them in store.
Yeah. So then we do all of this.
Right. And then we of course go to Prada
That's because
because we're
your soon to be 86-year-old grandmother wanted to look at a pair of shoes. So of course we
yeah,
went. And truth be told, we were there earlier on our own accord, and then she gave us a reason to go back.
right.
And we FaceTimed with her to see them. And you can't get it, like, it's crazy. These things are like $1,500, $1,800 for shoes, like insane prices. And
Yeah.
so, because we love your grandmother so much, I got a pair of shoes for her and brought them back because,
They were sold out.
right,
And
sold
and
out.
also, by the way, they're sold out. The amount that they're sold out of and how much these items cost, I'm like, who's buying all this? And the cost of living in New York, I'm like, who is coming in and purchasing all these items?
Yeah, only the people who can afford there because it's Mondami's gonna tax the shit out of everybody, so they have to have enough money, you don't care, or you're not buying them, and so it's become a
Right.
whole narrative where, like, who got the head and who got the tail, they don't have enough of them, they only get 1 or 2 in because they know that's about all the people that can afford it. But anyway, so we're at Prada, and they served me a glass of well, they brought out a half a bottle of champagne, which God knows I could have had, but I used some restraint because we had a big meeting on Wednesday. But then we go from there to the Monkey Bar, which I used to see like Carrie from Sex and the City sitting at the Monkey Bar and the wallpaper's monkeys, and it's so great. And you had never been. So, to your
No.
surprise, was your mother right about the fact that this was a place to go or not?
Oh, the whole place was completely bumping. There was not a single seat at the bar. And then they have the front room, which is the bar, and then like first come, first serve seating. And then the whole back of the building is the actual restaurant for like seated reservations. So we go in and there's one guy leaves. So we take that one seat at the bar. And Jody is really into playing the pregnancy card, even though she is not the pregnant person. She's like, my daughter's pregnant. We need a place to sit.
Let
Like,
me
can
tell
we
you,
sit?
these bitches in New York do not back down. They are grade A level, like hustlers,
No.
and they have there's no like in San Francisco where everyone's asking 10 people, were you waiting? Were you waiting? In New
No.
York, it's grab and go. So I, of course, was standing there, but they were eyeing it as well. And of course, they're not going to fight with me saying that I'm there because my pregnant daughter needs to sit. There is girl code, and the New York women are very, reasonable with that. So okay, now we're sitting, but we only have 1 seat.
Correct. And so we were like, all right, no, the women next to us had ordered dinner. We are like, all right, we are between a rock and a hard place. Nobody's going to be moving soon. But one of the high top tables cleared out behind us. So Jody
She
walks
puts a
over.
reserve sign. The host just puts a
Right.
reserve sign down, like, to clearly tell me, like the woman at the froyo who saw me put my little extra on, that's not happening.
No,
Right.
this is not for you. Jody goes over and she looks at me and she's like, she kind of mouths at me. She's like, should I tip her? Like, should I tip the hostess? And I was like, yeah, for sure. So Jody pulls out cash. And by the way, this is like now the half, like the champagne from Prada in, and then the glass of champagne, the first glass of champagne from Monkey Bar in. So she goes over, and all of a sudden we have been moved from the one high chair at the bar to the actual high
High top.
table with 2 seats, like ready to order dinner.
Yeah.
Then we even progressed from there to the booth next door, like
In the
full
bar. We
on.
went from the
Right,
bar
in the
to the high
bar, like
top to exactly
right.
where we wanted to be, which was at the booth, and we hadn't ordered yet. And basically, we just sat there because I know full well possession is 9/10 of the law. And by the time we got there, that the hostess knew that we were non-negotiable. So then
We
we
golden
sat,
tempoed it. We started at the back, we
yeah,
moved a little bit up, then we
and
got
then
to
we went
second,
in for the
and
kill.
then we won. We 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 Kentucky Derbied Monkey
So
Bar.
we Kentucky
That's what
Derby
we
at
did.
the monkey
Yeah,
bar, literally.
exactly. And then we went to our meeting on Tuesday, and we are in
No,
person
Wednesday. Meeting on
on
Wednesday, and the
Wednesday,
guy
yes.
said last night, and you said we went to the monkey bar, and he was like, "No way, how'd you get
He's
in?"
like, "How did
Because
you get in? How'd you
yeah,
get in?" I was like, "Have you met my boss? That's how I got in."
what he said is the reason it was so incredibly busy was it because it was the week of the Met Gala.
Right.
So I would like to just mention the Met Gala for a second because I don't get it. It seems like the worst group of people who go to the Met Gala, and exemplified by the fact that like Beyonce and Jay-Z brought their 14-year-old daughter. So I just can't wrap my head around. Is this just like a self promotion where you show how great you think you are and you bring a child who is not even allowed to be there, because it's 18 or 21 and over? I don't get it. What is this kid gonna look forward to at 14 years old? Why can't she just be 14?
Because her parents are Beyonce and Jay-Z. That's why she can't just be 14. Like, this is Blue Ivy was on stage during Beyonce's Cowboy Carter tour dancing.
That's not the issue. The issue is this appropriate? And is this good for somebody, a child's health and well-being, and also their perspective of where they are in the world?
For them, this is their world. This is normal. Like, I think it's all about the
How
baseline
does she go
piece.
to college and go function out there
Not
thinking,
going to
you
college.
know
Why would she need to go to college? She has a trust fund that will go all the way to her kids. Like, there is
I
no,
forgot
like,
about that.
you're talking about it from, like, a person's point of view
You're
who,
saying she just stays in this lane the rest of her life, never
correct,
never
correct,
has to
that
have a
this is
job.
no, this is a nepo baby. This is the definition of a nepo baby. That is
Alright.
this is it. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, it's a whole different reality.
Yeah, I'm glad that's not your reality. You're there knocked up, trying to hang your curtains and get your bench right for a
Well,
child coming in and
my nesting is in full swing. I have curtains up now, which I actually talk about from I did budget very well for this because there's a guy in St. Louis who does drapes and curtains and the whole thing. And his whole value proposition is that like he comes, does the measurements, you pick the fabric, and then he does the full install. So I bootstrapped it where I bought the curtains, I bought the hardware, I did the measurements, and then I hired a professional picture hanger to come in and actually install them. And the whole
let's
cost of everything was a quarter of what it would have been if I had hired the guy to come and do it all beginning to end.
well, this is a good way to segue into our guest today and also how much small business and how many entrepreneurs are out there and what's happening.
Yes. So we read an article over the weekend. Jody and I talked about it ahead of time. But from Mike Allen, it was Axios AM deep dive on May 9th. And the whole article was about how the US has always been a land of entrepreneurs. And it was a special issue that explored why Americans are starting more small businesses than ever. And it says, quote, Americans are starting businesses at a record pace, an entrepreneurial hot streak that helps sets the US apart from the rest of the global economy. It matters because the strong pace of new startups in the years since the pandemic likely plays a role in US economic resilience and dynamism. It's amplified by AI, which gives the smallest startups new capabilities that once required much larger operations.
Yeah, because it's going to be smaller teams and you can start a company using AI. And also, people are motivated, and that has always been the American way to reward people who are innovative.
It says that Americans are filing paperwork to start new businesses at near record rates, averaging 470,000 applications a month in 2025, and that's 66% above pre-pandemic norms. And so here's the other place that means that the startup surge is increasingly composed of solo operators rather than businesses with plans to hire. And this is really where, they're actually in our world, in the private market world, there was a report that came out by Carta, and Carter talked a lot about headcount and how the size of teams have gotten increasingly smaller because of AI's ability, not AI as a sector, but AI kind of as
Company.
impacting. Right, it's impacting every single industry, whether it's biotech or medical device or it's tech or robotics or whatever it is, that it's become a layer that regardless of what industry the company actually is, you are using to be efficient.
So I have AI somewhere, and it's helping companies be able to start that may not have been able to before the pandemic and before this whole AI boom. And it's good. It's innovation, and it's people who are really creative and hustling, and they want to get to their own independence because working for someone else doesn't seem as attractive, and they want to, be in a world where they're in charge.
Totally. And that really does lead us into our guest today, who is David Stine and Stephanie Abbajay, who run David Stine Furniture, a custom wood furniture maker based in Illinois, right across the river from St. Louis. They are known for sustainable, handcrafted furniture. David is the founder and owner of the company and was recognized with Best in Show Sustainable Design in 2016 from Architectural Digest. Hello, David and Stephanie. Thank you for joining us for the CapLander podcast.
Thanks for having us. We're
Thank you so
excited to be
much.
here.
Absolutely.
So fun. I'm outnumbered now with the St. Louis representation.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I would love to know, first of all, you're a husband and wife working together. I mean, we have this being mother-daughter, so there must be a dynamic there. And then, David, you've obviously had a trajectory that got you here that was sort of special. Maybe you could share with our audience how you got to be doing what you're doing and what it is exactly that you are doing.
Well, sure. What I do is we build custom furniture here in the Midwest. what sets us apart from other people is we build the furniture that we do all out of hardwoods that we harvest sustainably off of land that's been in our family for 4 generations. So we have about 1,000 acres here just outside of the St. Louis area, and we harvest all the timber that we use in our work off of that land. So we're kind of vertically integrated in our company. We do everything from manage the forest right up to and including delivering furniture for clients. The design process, working closely with clients all the time to help them realize their dreams. So the way I got into it, I grew up on a dairy farm right here where we still live. I hated milking cows, and so when we would do forestry things in the wintertime, I really took to that. So I just sort of turned that into really what took it as a hobby or as something we did as a sideline and made that my business. Kind
You
of went
mean
a
when you had to
circuitous.
go milk cows instead of milking cows, you were like, "I'm going out to the trees, to the forest,
Yeah, if
and
you've
I'm
ever
gonna
milked a
figure out what to
cow,
do." Yeah, with
it,
I'm
it
gonna with the wood.
if any of your listeners have any ever milked a cow, they'll know why I don't like it. That is no way to live your life because it's twice a day, every day until you die. So anyway, it was always very important. My family's very education centered. So all the 8 grandkids that are in my generation went to college. I went to college. I was really good at college. My grandfather's like, "Hey, how are we going to keep the farm together?" A lot of family farms were being lost to inheritance taxes and or intergenerational squabbles, things like that. So I went to law school at George Washington in Washington D.C., and I specialized in trust, estates, tax planning, wills, probate, that kind of thing. And then when I graduated, I took a job in that field. And then I was able to also help my family out to do their planning. And so some people think that that sort of planning and that sort of law is a little dry, and it can be, but when you have a dog in the fight and when you're sort of raised with this intergenerational land, it makes it a little bit more interesting, I think. So
Yeah,
that's
you've got skin in the
that's
game.
yeah, yeah. And so that's how I got through school. But then all the time during both college and in law school, I was doing woodworking on the side and coming home to the farm and timbering and logging and managing the forest and doing things of that nature. So I always kind of had my fingers in the manual labor.
Right. Well, you never really let go of it, that it was something that you had kind of done the whole way through from when you were a kid. And so your grandfather and then your father, so you're third generation. And I mean, I did my homework on you ahead of time. So you're obviously not practicing law anymore. So where was the divide for you as a reform lawyer who is like, I'm not going to do this anymore? And what led to that decision to leave law and then
And
become
when did you
David
meet
Stine
Stephanie?
furniture?
Stephanie must have factored in because you didn't grow up on the farm together, so
Well,
So we met in DC when he was in law school. I used to own a bar in Adams Morgan, and I met him. He was
fine.
one of my customers.
I lived in
Um,
DC for, I think it was 7 years. Morgan actually was born in DC.
is that
okay,
right?
all
Where
Yeah,
did
I
right.
you
spent
live in
10
DC?
years in the defense business with TRW,
Oh,
and
wow.
the apartment that we had first was in DuPont Circle, and
Okay.
then right at the little street on Hillier Place, they backs up to where the,
Yeah,
Phillips Gallery is,
yeah, I
and
know
then up
exactly.
near Adams Morgan, I can't what's the neighborhood before Ad or around the corner from
Woodley Park.
yeah, Woodley Park.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
were, like,
So
up near in Woodley Park.
we lived at DuPont Circle for a while, and then we lived in Adams Morgan, and then we moved to Mount Pleasant. But my bar was on 18th Street in Adams Morgan, right in the
Yeah.
heart of Adams Morgan.
Yeah.
So we met in the bar. We got married. He was practicing law and was doing woodworking at night and on the weekends, and he was just miserable. He just hated it. He'd come home from work and just have hated being sitting behind a desk all day. So after about 6 months of that, we just talked, and I said, "Why don't you just quit law and just do the woodworking full time?" So that's what he did, and that was 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I
Yeah.
mean, it always people ask me all the time, like, "Oh, I want to do what you do. How do you do what you do?" Like, first of all, marry somebody incredible that is very supportive, and that will
Aw, that's
allow you
nice.
to
I
kind
just
of
got
realize your
goosebumps
dreams.
for that one.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, that's really the point because if you're in a relationship with somebody, it's what you do has a big effect on what they do.
Yeah.
Stephanie saw that I wasn't happy. Everybody in her family and everybody in my family are entrepreneurs or self-employed or business people that have made their own way. And so I think for some people, the psychological barrier is pretty tough to making that leap. And for us, it was really not that big of
It's
a
the same
leap.
thing for us because my dad is a entrepreneur. He just sold his company at 85 years old, and he still goes to work 3 days a week as a
That's great.
pharmacist. And he's got a farm D and very entrepreneurial. And his father owned drugstores before him, so never worked for my father. Never worked for anybody else. And now here
Yeah.
I am with Morgan on the line, and so we perpetuated this dynamic of being entrepreneurs. And in some respects, it's the best job security, and in other respects, it scares the hell out of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we're looking at the what's going on in the plan, and it can be a little
Yeah.
daunting sometimes. But overall, I trust me more than I trust anybody else
Yeah.
to be in charge of my career and my financial situation and my family. Really,
Yeah. We feel the
Well,
same
yeah,
way. Yeah.
we couldn't agree more. And at the end of the day, the buck stops here, doesn't it? And if you are not
yeah.
having a great day, whose fault is it? Check the
Yeah.
mirror.
Sometimes I blame Morgan, right,
honest-
Morgan? Sometimes it's your
I-
fault.
Honestly, I'm also the eldest, so I think a lot of it too. And I think there's a difference between having an older son and then an older daughter, because daughters, I think inherently, like you see this all online where the eldest daughter is just a different breed.
They say that
Because
you have more stress, any elder daughter of a younger brother, that you've had trauma basically.
yeah, I'm Trauma City.
Yeah.
I'm the capital. So that's where I live. And, I think a lot of it though too is that the accountability piece is hard. And we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and innovators who take the side hustle, who take what they enjoy doing outside of work, and they turn that into their career. And I think part of this, I mean, I even watched the iHeart Music Awards a couple of weeks ago, and Taylor Swift talked about this, which is nothing, it was nothing groundbreaking, but she's like, you have to nurture your hobby. You have to really take care of it like it is a job for you if you really do enjoy it. If you are going and turn into a full career, you have to be really good at it and you have to really enjoy it, which it sounds like for you, you had already had the generational piece of being exposed to it, but then making the decision to actually have this be a legacy business. So my guess, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that what your business is today is very different than what it was for your father and your grandfather.
Well, yeah. I mean, first off, although I grew up on the farm, woodworking was never a part of money making for the farm. So my grandfather, and it's actually my maternal grandfather, he grew up on the farm as well. My great grandfather, they moved to the farm in the early teens or late teens, early 20s. And he
All
had
from
actually been.
Missouri. Was everybody in Missouri?
Well, no. So we're right across the river from St. Louis.
God.
The little trick of
Illinois.
geography here is we're actually directly north of St. Louis, right across the Mississippi River. And so, right before the Great Depression hit, my great grandfather had some sort of idea that bad things were on the way, and he was a contractor in St. Louis. So he sold his contracting business, moved over here, bought a farm. He figured if things got really bad, at least they'd be able to feed themselves. And that's how the farm started. So it was my great grandfather on my mom's side, and then my mother's father. And then my dad is actually from Pennsylvania, and he met my mom when they were both in college in Southern Illinois. And so it's always been my mom's side of the family with the farm and everything. My dad's side of the family was entrepreneurial in a different way. When my grandfather came back from World War II on my father's side, he went to work for a Chevy dealership and then worked his way up almost immediately and bought a dealership. And then he owned several dealerships throughout the course of his life, and then retired and sold the dealerships much later. But the whole woodworking thing, that was pretty much just me. Although
It wasn't the moneymaker.
no, no, not at all, not at all. And then, one of the ways that I actually learned to become a woodworker and a furniture maker is when my grandfather on my mom's side retired from the farm. I was probably, I don't know, 12, 13 years old. We would go to auctions every weekend. And this was back in the day where auctions were still live. And you would go to a live auction and he would pick antiques from the auctions and buy them. We'd bring them back to the farm where he had a small workshop, and then we'd take everything apart and restore and refinish. And that was really sort of a backdoor education as to what sort of styles people respond with through the years, what kind of materials work well, joints, construction, materials, all that kind of stuff. So that's sort of the backdoor into it. My dad did a little bit of dabbling in furniture making just as a real hobby, but really it was, I guess it was that small piece from my grandfather where I got the bug, I guess.
And Stephanie, how was it for you to move to Missouri? Or were you in Illinois? I'm not 100% sure, although I know that
Yeah, we're in
Morgan.
Illinois, but then we have our farm here. We bought a little farm right next to the farm where I grew up. So we've got our little 40-acre piece. And then we have a small house in St. Louis as well. Our kids went to school in St. Louis, so we decided we wanted to be part of the community down there. So we bought a small house, and I commuted during the years our kids were in school down there. But
It's
now,
just over a bridge because Morgan, I made that mistake once, right?
yeah,
Didn't I drive
it's
over
really
the bridge?
close.
I was like, okay, I'm not in St. Louis anymore. I'm someplace
Yeah,
another
it's very
state.
close.
Where our farm and our wood shop is very rural, though. It's only 35 miles from St. Louis, but it's really rural.
Yeah.
And we
It's like
moved
when you're
here
in the
from
Bay Area and you drive to Napa, you're like, okay, now it's
exactly.
amazing. 20 minutes north or whatever,
Yeah.
half an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But being so close to St. Louis is great. It's been great for our business. It's been great for the kids. It's been great for us socially, but mostly for business. It's been really positive.
It's been really good for business
Yeah.
for sure. Being a part of that community was a
Yeah.
really good step that we made, and it was a stretch too. I loved being able to wake up in the morning and walk 100 yards to the workshop, and then when we decided to make the move to St. Louis for the kids' sake, it was more like a 45-minute commute every morning, which is was a big I don't know, a little
You
bit of
went
a
from
hurdle, but
you potentially could have had this very sophisticated bougie life, being the lawyer, and then you having a bar and being in DC and doing all this, right? Out for dinners and kids potentially in private school and, more, and then a place for the weekends. And you opted out of that and opted into a more, I mean, you talk like very family oriented, Midwestern traditional values, which is so it's juxtaposed now, I think, more than ever in terms of where people are finding satisfaction in their lives.
sure.
Because everyone has to figure out what their middle ground is. But it sounds like, David, in particular, for you had a clear path to know. And then Stephanie, when you met David, you were like, David's my clear path, and this will make sense for us as a family and our businesses and everything else.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was that clear cut to me
Yeah,
at the time.
yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
Moving here from DC, where I had lived for 15 years, was
Right.
really, really challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a very challenging first few years. And then
Why? What was so challenging? You're like, what the fuck am I doing here?
That's exactly right. You couldn't even get the St. Louis Post-Dispatch delivered to our farm. Like it was that rural. And this was 2002. So, 20 some years ago.
And Stephanie grew up in town. She grew up in Toledo, Ohio. So
not a rural environment.
when I say
That was
that,
my question. I was like, where's your benchmark for this coming from? So you're from Ohio.
Yeah.
She grew up in a big town in Ohio, in Toledo, and then she moved to DC, and so
and as you know, when we lived in DC, we lived in the city. We didn't have a car.
Going on.
We walked everywhere, and then to move from that to rural Illinois, where you have to drive everywhere, it was really challenging. But then I started to kind of get into it. Started keeping chickens. Started making jam. Worked for the local newspaper. Help build the business. And then
Stephanie is completely underselling herself. So she came out here and she was miserable for about 2 weeks, maybe 2 months. I'm not sure. I was fully engaged in just trying to keep the business running. Most of my clients were still on Long Island, in DC, around New York City, and in LA and in San Francisco. So I was just gone all the time, doing my thing. Stephanie, Oscar was very young, and Steph, had been the entrepreneur and the heart of several businesses in DC. Well, she came back here. I'll try to make the story short, but a local paper was advertising for an office manager, was it?
Just
or
an office.
a receptionist.
Yeah.
So Stephanie applied. So of course she got the job.
Yeah.
6 weeks later, she's the editor of all 6 of their papers. So this is the kind of gal that I'm married to. She's like,
I love
okay,
that, though.
yeah, sure, I'll be your receptionist. And they're like, okay, we have a major talent here. You're promoted to run everything now. So that's exactly how that works.
At all.
Yeah.
I think that's like the exact testament of what you're talking about, of having the mindset when you're willing to do any job and you're like, I just, whatever it is, whether it's the jam or the chickens or the furniture or the bar, like
Oh, yeah.
it's work. It's
That's
work
right.
and it's time. And if you're going to do it, you're going to do it well. And good on
Yeah.
them for at least noticing that they had somebody there
And
who
good on
had.
you for
Absolutely.
being
Yeah.
like, I don't, how many people complain I can't find a job? But you're like, yeah, you could actually find a job, but you just
Yeah.
don't want to do that kind of work because,
Right.
That's
you
right.
have it in
Yeah.
your head that either you're too educated for that or
That's
too
right.
Well,
something. But
people, Jody,
really,
people get in their own way so much, and
Yeah.
what, like you said, the mental thing is a big piece of it. But I think the main takeaway from that, right, is it hasn't been just a straight path for us. It's been very circuitous, and we take a lot of exits, and sometimes we just back up and reset completely. But in our marriage and our business and everything, we renegotiate every day. We're constantly just sort of trying to figure out which way the
you're
wind
the
is
lawyer
blowing.
and Stephanie's the side hustle. And then she's actually really the main hustle, but she lets you think you're the main hustle. So I can only imagine that must be quite an on
Oh no,
ramp, off ramp.
I'm
Who's
under
on
no
first?
illusions, Jody. I'm under no illusions whatsoever. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. She's front of the house, I'm back of the house.
Yeah.
What is it like to work together as a married couple? Because I get the question as like a mother-daughter, but to be married to somebody definitely seems like it's a different dynamic.
It is not for the faint of heart. And when people ask me if they should do it, I always tell them no, because I don't think you guys know this very well. I was also in business with my sister for 15 years. But what you have to do, and this is with any partnership, but especially a husband, wife, son, daughter, sister, you have got to have very bright lines of responsibilities. You need to stay in your lane. You need to define what your roles are so you're not stepping on each other's toes. You also have to really understand where somebody's ego lies and make sure that you're not detracting from what they need. And this is over and above somebody's skill set. Like, obviously, I do not make furniture. Dave Stine makes the furniture. So I'm front of the house. He's back of the house. So that's a natural sort of break
Segue.
in our, yeah. But also, we need different things from our clients and from our marketing. And so you just have to really know who you're working with and what they need. My sister calls it, it's not the golden rule, it's the platinum rule. And it's, treat your partner or your business person or your client how they want to be treated, not how you want to be treated. Right. And I feel like in a business partnership, that's one of the most important ways to be successful. How do you guys do it?
I mean, Jody, I was the one piece I want to say about it too is my grandmother said this about buying gifts for other people. She's like, you don't buy them the gift that you want, you buy them the gift that they want, that
That's the
they're
platinum
going.
rule. That's exactly right.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of it. I mean, obviously, Jody and I talk about this a lot where Jody is the boss. Period. End
I
of
do have to
story.
remind Morgan of that sometimes when she's mouthy with me. Like, I'm sorry, did you forget the fact that I do not work for you? That comes up. That is, I think I
Well,
probably say that once every 2 weeks. I used to say it like once every day, and then it was once every other day. So the frequency has gone down, but Morgan does still forget sometimes that I am in charge. I am HBIC, head bitch in charge. Hello,
So
right?
you guys
I don't-
aren't partners. You work for Jody.
I
Morgan.
work for Jody. Yes.
Correct.
I work for
that's
I
Jody.
still an
started this
interesting
business
dynamic. Yeah.
30 years ago,
It
29
is
years
different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Jody and I work, it's still, I guess, on a piece of it is that, yes, Jody is the boss and we work together. They kind of exist twofold because exactly what you're saying with the responsibility piece, we don't do the same thing, but we work a lot together. And especially when it comes to what you're talking about, the client relations, and there's a lot of things where we collaborate. And ultimately, I'm not the HBIC, so I am not the buck at the end of the road, but it still has obviously, I mean, I worked
Well, I
with her for close.
respect Morgan and I value her input on
Yeah.
some things, on most things. But in some areas, like you said, you have to know your skill set. And I know that I don't care what someone else thinks. I know what the business needs or
There you
what I
go.
think the right thing is. And that at the end of the day, because I got my ass on the line, I'm willing to make that decision and have the fallout from it. And I don't want to hear any more on it. Like
Yeah.
I've made my decision. But
Yeah.
generally, and we're more collaborative than ever, but it's different because you have a partnership and then you go home with this. Morgan and I are at times sometimes saying,
Yeah.
I'm done talking to you today.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to take a little break,
Yeah.
and that's good.
That was
Wait
a
till
big
I move.
challenge for us, setting boundaries, because we
Yeah,
used
you're like, I
to,
can't run from this
yeah,
person.
and our wood shop used to be located at our farm, and as Dave said, you'd literally walk out the back door, across the backyard, and there was the wood shop. So there was never a separation between work and business. And then we bought a building 7 years ago where we moved production, and now we have a showroom. So now we can actually leave our house, go to work on a set schedule, and come home. And so there's a better boundaries. But we did
Right.
have issues where we can't do pillow talk, we can't do business in bed. I can't. I need to be done working at 4 or 5 and not think about it again. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big thing we had to learn about our working relationship. I can be on the phone, on the computer, or talking about business at 10:55, and I can be sound asleep at 11, no problem. Stephanie needs a couple hours to decompress after
Break.
the
Yeah.
workday, and I just had to learn that it had to be over at a certain point. And
for me, yeah,
Right, and Stephanie also had to teach me that it's and this is not a Stephanie discovery, but something I never knew growing up on the farm. Growing up on the farm, you never there's never not work to do, right? Saturday, what the fuck Saturday? Who cares? So you're just always working. And so I grew up that way. I think it's one of the reasons Stephanie was attracted to me when we first got together, is because I got so much stuff done. I was just constantly
Work
getting things
ethic.
done. And,
Right.
that's great, but that also means you're always working. You're
Yeah,
away
I'm like
from the
that. I'm
children.
always working. I have 2 offices at home, one in the corner up here, and then I have a separate office. And I can slide in 2 seconds, no problem. And I
Yeah.
enjoy it because it keeps things moving. And
yeah,
Morgan, I feel like you're more like, I am not talking work today.
Oh, there's
But
because obviously Jody and I talk over the weekend, right? And I'd say
yeah.
we even yesterday was an example. It's a Sunday afternoon, and she was like, "I need to talk to you about for work for 5 minutes." And I looked at the phone and I was like, "Ugh, I don't want to do this,"
But
but
I asked
I
her. I
appreciate.
said, when
Right,
is a reasonable time for
right. But I
you?
appreciate. I was like, okay, when do you want to do this? And that's
Right.
fine. But on Saturday when we were on the phone and she was talking about something, and I was like, I'm not talking about work at all. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about work.
She
Thinking
was
about work.
Stephanie. Now I have a
Yeah.
code name for you. Morgan, is your Stephanie in check today, or what's happening?
There you go. Yeah. Well, Jody and Morgan, you guys, that's exactly, the sort of the relationship issue we have, because I'm more like Jody. I would work 24/7 until I absolutely just passed out. And
Right.
Stephanie's like, listen, it's never going to be done. You're never going to have all the work done. You need to just take a break and give yourself a Saturday. And I think what's funny about that is we got many clients that are very good at setting boundaries for their own sort of situation, but then they have no problem calling me a Sunday at 10 o'clock at night and being like
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
XYZ.
I kind of like it. So I have a question for you as it relates to sort of you did all of this, like you got us to the farm and the building, and it sounds like, and children. So now what? What's next? What's the plan? You obviously you built a business, you're no longer like, I don't know if you were ever scared, but now this is a viable business. You don't have to milk cows. Stephanie, you have a life both in St. Louis and outside in the rural and the farm. What's the plan from here?
Well, our plan is to continue to grow the business. We're
Yeah.
not interested in scaling it so much as just keeping it growing it's grown every year by 10, 15%, which is lovely.
Yeah.
We don't ever want to get so big where Dave Stine doesn't touch every single piece of furniture that we make.
Yeah.
It's a really artisanal, craft-centered business. We're not making widgets. We're not cranking out 1,000 pieces a month. Everything is truly handcrafted and one of a kind. So our growth really comes in when we sort of segment the market and we want to sell more $15,000 dining tables rather than $2,000 benches. You know what I mean? So that's where our growth
St.
is.
Louis-based business in terms of your clients, or are you shipping all over the
We ship
U.S.?
all over the world. 20 years ago, when we first started out, it was none of the business was in the Midwest. And now it's probably 50% is in the Midwest, sort of a 5-hour radius around St. Louis.
Yeah, Chicago, Kansas City,
Nashville.
Memphis, Nashville. And then we still have some good clients on the coasts. When we first started, we were in DC, and things were different then. People didn't buy $20,000 dining room
right.
tables on the internet, and now they're fine with that. So we went around and physically did furniture shows, taking a huge truck with our booth and the whole thing. And we were featured exhibitor at the Architectural Digest Home Design Show on the West Side Highway in New York for 15 years. We used to do the Dwell Show in LA every year, so it's changed a lot. We still have a lot of those clients and a lot of the great relationships we built during that time, but we've been able to sort of get more local business. And I think it's because we relocated here, it's been 27 years. Back in 2002, we relocated back to the farm because we were living in DC when we started the business. But also, I think the Midwest has sort of caught up. I don't want to say stylistically, but people here in the Midwest are pretty have a little bit of a bias against themselves sometimes. If it's not from Chicago, if it's not from New York, maybe it's not quite good enough. Oh, you do this, this is like a homemade, it's not craft furniture. But I think the whole sort of culture has caught up with kind of where we were when we started the business back on the East Coast.
All the way back
30 years
around.
ago.
Yeah.
It's the excellence. And I think you're right. People are actually have come full circle where the furniture, my grandparents' couches in their living room are the same couches they bought when they got married at 20 years old.
That's
and
amazing.
my grandparents
Incredible.
have been married for 66 years, and they've had the couches recovered and they've had the cushions restuffed, but the
That's
actual
great.
frame of furniture is
Yeah.
the same. And
Yeah,
they
they
always
bought quality stuff and they took
Exactly.
care of it. And now it's lasted for
Exactly. 66 years. And that's part of it where I think that at least when my husband and I bought our first home, it's a kind of a dual mindset because you don't want to buy crap, but you also can't afford the $20,000 dining room table. And that's exactly, Stephanie, what you're saying, where there is the halfway point with some of the benches and some of the other pieces, which that could accommodate. My dining room table came from my mother-in-law's basement from a house that she put on the market for a client, and the dining room table had not been cleared out in time. So she moved it to her basement, and that table from that basement is now my table.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's a piece of that where you have consumers who are really mindful of wanting to buy quality pieces. And I love how on your website, you use the word excellence.
Well, I
Which
would
is
also
really
like to say, to wind up here, is that I find it so the part about the wood. There's something about wood that is very stable, and you maneuver this in ways with your craft to have it be very stylish and elegant. But there is a piece about the business that fits the lifestyle, that fits the Midwest, that fits your marriage and relationship, fits how you got here with the family dynamic. So to me, it makes perfect sense that that's the nature of what you do, and I love the fact that your fingerprints are all over everything, and really both of you, your fingerprints are all over everything, and that really is the secret sauce. So I want to thank you for being with us today. I hope so. I'm headed to St. Louis on Thursday, and maybe we can grab a drink or something. I'd love it, because we're going to use we're going to a restaurant on Friday night that you did the furniture for, right?
Yeah, Louis.
You're going to Louis, yeah.
Yeah, that's so great. So great. Morgan, any last thing to add since you're our St. Louis connection?
I'm going to say this now for the third time, but it'll be the first time for somebody who's listening. I have eaten many a cheeseburgers off of a David Stine table, and some of the best cheeseburgers and French fries I've ever had in my life. So I am a big, big, big fan of everything you've made from afar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today for the CapLander podcast. If you loved this episode, share it, and make sure to subscribe to CapLander for more conversations like this.